Hi, welcome back. I'm Bill Quinn. I am joined by Sheila Holm. Sheila, we had so much to cover in our last video, we had to do a second extension. So thank you for making yourself available a second time.
Part Deux, D-E-U-X. I don't know if we can put that on there, but this is Part Deux. In the same week, Part Deux. Okay,
Part Deux.
We're ready.
All right. So just in the last, even after we broke the last video, there's been more happening. And let's start with this because it just came from the White House, made sure that people knew about this. Mr. Don Lemon has been arrested. Wow.
Part of the church riots. But he already had an indictment, but evidently the indictment has been unsealed and the arrest is now going to include this. There's a little headline right above this. Can we show that little headline from the White House?
Yes, we can. Give me just a moment.
Because it's so precious. It is so the humor of our president.
There we go. When
life gives you lemons. The humor that's coming out is just amazing. Just like even with the military. Oh, did I not tell you that this guy happens to be the Major General over the 101st Airborne? It can't get better than where we are now. And that's why he keeps enjoying eating popcorn with those 3D glasses on in the movie theater and just, we need more popcorn for this weekend. They have more popcorn for this weekend. And it's been an adorable process, hasn't it? It's reached a whole different level.
It is. And one of the things that strikes me is as we learn more, things begin to tie together. And we just saw the thing about Don Lemon getting arrested. Now, he was arrested with regard to people protesting inside a church. And that was obviously inappropriate. And they seemed to be aggressive in the church, which would be unbelievably inappropriate. But it also ties back to everything we're learning around Minnesota, part of which is the nature of these organizations structured to steer money and funding and I guess help in some ways to Somalis and probably others. But this whole notion of Somalis and others receiving our money through the government and through then other NGOs is a very troubling one. You started speaking of this in our last video, and we've got some other data now, even down here into Georgia, that says this is not just a Minnesota problem. This is it's a national problem, like so many other things.
Well, it's happening everywhere. Minnesota, they've already confirmed this is just the template, guys. It's the same everywhere. We're going to be dealing with this everywhere. The cleanup is all across this country. It's not just one or two states. It's not just one or two cities. They've been very, very clear. In fact, our friend Juan told us a long time ago, we were just talking about this before we came on. He was telling us there's going to be uprisings. Don't get involved with it. Don't participate in it. Don't be included in it. Now, here's the difference with Lemon being in that church about the riots. Did you know they're training him in the church? So did they train him in the church and then take him in the church to get the other people to riot with them? It's going to be real interesting to see the details of this case because we just talked on the previous interview, part 1. I don't have a fancy name for that one because one is one. But in part 1 of this interview process this week, we covered Clarksville.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that. Now, there's an independent reporter, David, I believe his last name is pronounced Kate, K-H-A-I-T, and he's done some amazing reporting, part of which he's done with Jason Frazier, one of the amazing election integrity experts here in Georgia, who's been doing lots of work to try to uncover what really happened. But now David, Kate has pivoted to also showing this notion of funding going to these populations, but not doing what we think it's been doing. Let's look at this first, and this will give us a pretty good sense.
It's trying to give $5 billion of your money for refugee resettlement programs, and then it ends up in places like
this. This is the International Rescue Committee, the largest refugee NGO in the country. They get the government funds and subcontract the work out to places like
This is the Somali American Community Center. It receives grants from the IRC in order to help refugees resettle in America.
But when we went in, we found this.
An almost completely abandoned retail space which hasn't filed taxes in almost 10 years.
Where almost every business is focused on getting refugees on taxpayer-funded welfare programs.
And that is how the largest refugee city in the country is funded.
And how over 87% of Somali immigrants end up on taxpayer-funded public assistance.
We spent 3 days in Little Somalia in Atlanta, Georgia.
The largest refugee center in the entire country. And this is what we found.
And we're going to come back to more of that in a couple of minutes. But let me just get your initial impressions. You know, we've talked about Georgia being an epicenter for many of these things. And yet again, here we uncover something that ties straight back to what we've seen in Minnesota. Go ahead one more time and give us the perspective of this is not any one area, please.
Well, because this is what the cities are doing. That's why they became sanctuary cities. Government, leave us alone. We're going to do what we're going to do. And the government's been behind the whole thing the whole time. The whole time. They've been involved in this, included in this. That's why we already mentioned in part 1 about the woman right hand to Tim Walz, who is organizing the riots, who is organizing about the trainings. The trainings are happening right in these cities. Much of it is happening inside churches. And when they're doing this training, she knows all about this. And it's not the Somalis that they're training to do this. It's our people in America that they're training to come against ICE to keep these people doing what they're doing, laundering the money behind the scenes. And who was that woman? That woman is one who smiles all the time, is friendly all the time, says what people say when they go into a campaign because she's a candidate for Senate, state Senate in Minnesota. And when you look at her, she looks like one of us. And she smiles and tells great stories and etc. And she's smiling and hugging on a selfie with Tim Walz. And she's the one coordinating the riots and the training programs in Minnesota. Who would have guessed?
Unbelievable.
Who would have guessed?
A very good confidant of mine wrote a paper, I believe about a year ago, comparing many politicians to actors. They are expert in many cases. They are expert actors. And while as we sit here, we can't say that every politician is playing a game. Many appear now to be doing exactly that. And boy, are they good at acting. They can lie right through their teeth, a lot of them. They can make up stories. They can, as you say, put on a great smile. And everybody in the crowd says, oh, they're a nice person. They're really worried about me. And it turns out that's exactly the opposite of what's going on.
Are people forgetting that not Elon Omar, AOC went through an audition process, filled out an application to audition to become a representative. Anybody remembering this? It's like, what do you mean you have to audition to be a candidate for?
Have you ever wondered how clowns like this become members of Congress? Are they simply actors or puppets doing as they're told? Some are groomed from an early age, and some are even chosen from a casting call. Here's how AOC became AOC.
Back in 2016, we put out a call for nominations. We got over 10,000 nominations. Out of those 10,000 nominations, we found Alexandria.
Lucky us. By the way, who is we?
I think we at Justice Democrats have a chance to really transform the Democratic Party.
Look at the absolute dumpster fires the Justice Democrats have given us.
Now let's go back to Charles Joseph Bonaparte. We've mentioned this before. It's in point 35 about the FBI in my new book. Charles Joseph Bonaparte came to America to set all this up. And when he set it up, it's the National Municipality League that's now the National Civic League. That didn't change till 1986, not so long ago. A lot of people may remember this, may not have known it changed, but you may have been around in 1986. So anyway, when he set this up, they have a merit-based system to select the candidates. And it says right in there, we only vote for 4, but are the 4 we're voting for the ones that they've positioned, and the rest of them, it doesn't matter because they're already going to get the job anyway? Because let me match this up with what happened in our country. And I've been with the people who are in those positions now, and we're in those positions in 2017. When President Trump came in 2017, did you know there were no job descriptions? There were no accountables.
Oh, wow.
The Department of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, he had nothing to go on. They had nothing to refer to. Nothing. And all of this money is going to all these employees, and there's no job descriptions. They all get paid.
And no caps on the
happen.
salaries in some cases, as I recall, yeah?
Mm-hmm. So in setting all of this up and bringing these people in, people didn't understand until Doge. We have 405 departments that are absolutely unnecessary. And we have Linda McMahon now on the cabinet dismantling the Department of Education. It never should have been put together. Never should have been here. The bureaus all have to go, including the FBI. And they were saying to discredit and then dismantle the FBI. They were going to do it because it was all set up by Hoover. The files were on all of us. The only people who get arrested are us. It's not the illegals, because they're the replacement team to get rid of us, to frustrate us, to get us out of here, to keep making us sick so we're out of here. All these reasons to depopulate, but the depopulation is only us. It's not the replacement people. Wow. See the difference? There wasn't anybody in Congress have you seen anybody in Congress dealing with COVID? House or Senate?
They've reported it, but you don't see them acting like they're very concerned or sick,
or that they ever took the vax.
Yeah. So
we're dealing with what is the next to the last sentence in the military accountability letter of 1/1 of 2024. We will fight until we have resolved, corrected, whatever the word was, the two-tier justice system. And our friend said that the military is going to have, when these uprisings happen, to stay out of the way of it and let the military handle it. Because they're already trained in this, because guess what? They have witnessed by being all over the world that this is done in all these other nations. This is how you take over a country. It's not just the elections, it's how they do these things. Because it's not just us that has this infiltration of people. Yep. Canada has infiltration. Look what happened in Britain itself, who's supposed to be the king of all of this. Britain is supposed to control everything, because it's not the royal family that's in there. It's a family that's controlling everything. And as soon as the mayor of London was Muslim, everything started changing. And they didn't notice the communities. And I'd like to name the communities, but some of them I don't pronounce well. When I'm in England, I pronounce them wrong, so I'm not going to even try. But if you look at the suburbs of London itself, those suburbs had mayors, and they were already taking over entire areas. Muslims came into Macon, Georgia. When I came to Macon, Georgia, Muslims came in and purchased churches that couldn't afford to continue, just like they did in London. None of this is different here than it is in other parts of the world. That's why God had me all over the world on his dime. I couldn't do anything. And he said, you can do all things through me. And I said, oh yeah, what can I do? I've got no way to do anything. And he took me all over the world on his dime. He provided tickets. He provided everything. And when I got there, I had nothing. And I was royally blessed. But every time I got home, I was back at nothing, because it's when you don't have an extra coin or tunic, will you go in my name? And that's where I was for a long time. And he handled absolutely everything, made tickets happen before the computers were on at the airports, and people handed it to me as will call. And there's no will call at the airport. You could have gone an hour before me, or a day before me, or a day after me, or an hour after me. There's no will call. But a woman, before the computers were on, said, well, I'm the will call person for the airlines, and so here's your ticket. And the people couldn't believe I had a ticket, because the computers weren't on. They couldn't print my tags for the luggage because the computers weren't on. And that's why God said you have to be at the airport before 4:30. He knows all of this. And when he arranges all of these things. Yeah. But I've been warning people about the churches, and now look what's happening with the churches. And it wasn't just where Lemon was. It was in Clarksville, Georgia, that we just talked about in the first part of this interview this week.
Yeah. I want to expand on something you said, which was, and we'll be clear that we're referring to some comments that 107 had made going back, I believe, almost 2.5 years ago, that he was talking about we would probably get to the point where we would see uprising in one form or another, or unrest, I guess is a better way to put it, and that it is to be expected, and it is the way that we'll call it for the time being, the bad guys will attempt to fight to prevent this from being, one, uncovered, and two, resolved, as you say, restored back to the proper republic.
Now, I think it goes back to 22, so I think we're more than 3.5 years.
Very good. So, but to his credit, he's been talking about this coming, and as you say, the watchword is, one, understand this is not us against us. This is us, the military, cleaning out what has to be cleaned out, which is the bad guys and their the folks that they influence or pay for, or both. But our job is to stay out of the way. We are not trained for this. We're not knowledgeable about how it's been put together in the past. And our job is to stay out of the way unless we, from legitimate sources, receive a request for some sort of assistance. And I think that's critical, because right now this appears to be getting perhaps more broad-based across the country, and will likely continue to do so for a period of time. But again, in sort of tight-knit places, my understanding is, they can field people, but they have a tendency to field them in small little knots. And they move them around. We've seen that through the briefings for Trump, where the president heard about what's being called Riot Inc. and the fact that they can fund these people through Soros and many others. And yet they will take the same people and move them around. Why? Because they know what they're doing. They've already been trained in this, as you say, trained sometimes even in churches. So they know how to do things to combat the restoration that's being accomplished.
Well, and our guys know the communication system they're on, but let me make it really clear. It's in the Constitution. And the reason they haven't taken oaths to the Constitution is point 13 that's in the 45-point book that just came out. That's the newest book. And that point 13 is avoid all loyalty oaths. Now, what are we dealing with? What you were just saying, Bill, is that what we're dealing with, we have enemies, foreign and domestic. And the difference for us right now is they're all here. They're all on our land. They didn't just, from other nations, destroy our election process, which is a takeover of America without a shot. The whole goal was to take over America, end it so that we didn't have any voice in America. And we didn't see it coming. And that's what happened in the election process. And so even though we warned them about 2016 and we warned them about 2018, 2020 happened. And 2020 really had to happen so we could understand we have enemies everywhere. And we've got enemies everywhere because everybody around the world in all these different nations has watched what we have done. Why they say death to America is we've been funding all this stuff to destroy them. And they're finding out that we're funding it to be mad at us. So now let's look at that. Enemies, both foreign and domestic, are what they took the oath to. So what our guys are doing here in America is that's why Bill was saying they know what they're doing, because they've dealt with this before, because they've dealt with it in these wars they've been in that we shouldn't have been in on the other side of the world. So the mistake for the enemy was they made sure our guys were trained to deal with it over there and lose their lives for those people while we were vulnerable here, and they were doing it to us and we didn't have anybody to protect us. And the people involved in representing us were the very people who were doing this to us. So that's why when people, please stop saying, I want to see arrests. You aren't going to see, when the military does this, it's swift and it's not, we aren't doing anything calling CNN and having them bring their lights like they did for Roger Stone at 6 a.m. That isn't going to happen. That's not how we operate. And here's the trouble we have. Every piece of paper in every single case has to be valid. All they have to do is find something that isn't valid, and they'll go to the races and get the person off. That's what we do not want. The reason it's taking so long is this evil has so permeated every area of our nation that you don't know who the Somali people are that are just giving you a song and dance, because AOC proved it. They audition people to make sure that you're the kind of person that can stand up and be in front of people. What is this all about? It is all about performance. And when you think about it, how many times over the decades where you see these people on TV and they sound really great? I used to get all these things about Trey Gowdy. And then when it came down to making decisions, who resigned right away and left? Trey Gowdy.
Trey Gowdy.
So we don't know who these people are.
Yep. As you say, too, you'll notice that they all of a sudden, when they're in a defensive position, they will become very vocal, trying to recast what's happening in some odd way to make it sound like, in this case, the FBI, for example, in Fulton County, did something wrong after these people have hid their ballots, obfuscated information, kept it under wraps for going on 5 years. And yet we see, and I'm going to play a video of one of the commissioners complaining about what's happened and trying to vilify, again, a great acting job, trying to vilify the FBI for stepping in and finally taking control of the situation. Let's take a look at this.
So here's an update. We're at the elections hub right here off of Fairburn Road, and they did correct the warrant, and they are now in there getting the documents. 700 boxes of 2020 ballots and accompanying things that go with it, absentee ballots, all the things, right? So our clerk of Superior Court, Sheila Holm, is in there making a log of everything that they're taking, but this is like all wrong. So we're trying to figure out a legal plan, and we should have one, whether that's an injunction, whether a motion to quash, whatever it is, we're trying to figure it out right now, because this is an attack on our elections, meant to keep you from trying to go to the polls in November, being too afraid to change what's going on in our nation. So instead of worrying about people dying in Minnesota, here we are at the Fulton County Elections Hub. So let me go find out what the legal plan is.
I don't think there's anything truthful in this except that she's so upset.
I agree.
Because we have every right, and we have followed all the rules and regulations. And in this investigation, and again, you have to refer to part 1 before part 2 of this of this interview this week, is that it was all described, and you showed the video where Tulsi Gabbard was right there. The people are right there. They're doing this. It was marked as a crime scene, because what they don't understand is a crime took place. They stored all this in the warehouse. Do you know where our election information is to go when it's all done, the final audited process, which they didn't? It's supposed to go to the House of Representatives and secured in D.C. And that's what that's part of what the problem is with Tina Peters. They're so mad because she was following everything to the letter, because she read what she's supposed to do. And there was a job description. That's what I'm coming back to. Did you realize that the majority of people in our government don't have job descriptions and they have no accountables? That was a shock to the team when they went in, a complete shock, because they had nothing. I taught in human resources. I was a director of human resources, and I taught at University of California, San Diego, and La Jolla for extra income. And as I was doing that, I taught how to put a personnel book together for the company, so you know what all the laws and regulations are, because they're adding them every single election in California. Sometimes there's 240, 250 new laws that you're signing for on your ballot in California, in multiple foreign languages and in different structures of counties. So we had no idea how complex they were making this. And when you don't have the job descriptions and you don't have the accountables, you're just paying people. What's happening, and where are the records, and and they hadn't sent these records in. They hadn't sent the final records in. But to say that they had the wrong subpoenas, they had to go and correct the subpoena. But now we're going to try and do everything to really get this quashed. They had every right to come in and do this. The subpoena gave them the right to do this. You can't say you can file an injunction against it. She doesn't even know what she's saying. And you can't quash this. Everything is being followed to the letter of the law. And remember when the president held up the Bible and he said, this is our rule of law. And he's bringing us back to that truth and that level of handling things. And that's why we're not going to quickly do things. They could have arrested Don Lemon a couple, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I mean, they already had things on him that have already been made public. But now back to these people who are so vocal like this. And I've mentioned this even about school board meetings. Stop. You get a parent in there who gets on the microphone and says all of these things. James O'Keefe studied the socialist people who were using your children and sending them out and giving them extra credit, plus they were being paid to go do these protests. And they get extra credit in the class for doing it. And that professor, teacher, told him there's 3 more in this same school that are doing the same thing. Nobody was interested. And let's find out who those 3 are. Let's get these 4 taken care of. It was all, why don't you arrest this one guy? We want to see something happen to somebody. That's not the answer. Cleaning up the structure and the system is what we have to do. And we the people are responsible for this republic that is of, by, and for who? The people. Yeah. This nation, people of America, we're responsible to clean that up. So we've got to quit being involved in viral moments, involved in complaining about what we think isn't getting done. Our guys are risking their lives to get this done so we can live in liberty and freedom for the first time in the history of America. Let me say that again. You've never been in liberty. You've never been free. We've always been under the control of England up until President Trump handled it. And now we can work on getting our republic restructured, but you have to start it from the ground up. And it's a completely different election. It has to be done once that determination happens, once that hammer comes down. We have 120 days to get that election handled. And the timing is completely different. You don't elect a president unless you're in a corporation out in November, early November, and then you let them do anything to destroy the whole process before that president has major authority to do anything until January. It's never mattered because they've all been controlled on what they can do anyway. Now it's going to matter if we'll just be patient and work with what we can do in our villages, towns, cities, counties, states. A lot of cleanup has to happen. A lot of this is already outlined in the new book. You have to see what was done wrong, what needs to be cleaned up, and then pray about it. See where you can be involved in cleaning this up. Because nobody's doing anything about these training sessions. Well, they're in a church. The people are gathering in a church. You have to leave them alone when they're what? When they're in a church. It's no different than any other building. It's Gentile pagan worship happening there. And they're in your churches every time you gather in your churches, making sure that you stay unaware and uninvolved. And you stay distracted by coming to all these things that they have you gather for. When you're not united with your family, educating your own children. And this is what's going on. And we need to come awake to that. And so what Bill had mentioned in the previous interview about Clarksville, Georgia, and that church, now he's mentioning to you about the church that this is in. And we also now have right now, within the last hour, Don Lemon arrested based on his involvement in the church riots.
We spotted a tactic that the bad guys are using to try to, we just showed Mo Ivory, who's one of the Fulton commissioners, just complaining with nonsense about how this was an inappropriate seizure of ballots that they have failed to turn over lawfully as commanded to do so. But now there's another tactic that I wanted to make sure that we talk to, because we can head it off when we spot it. And what you're going to see is Rob Pitts. He is the chairman of the Fulton County Commission. He's going to begin setting a foundation for another type of complaint that I think they're going to make. Let's listen to this, and then we'll talk about it for a minute.
They have been removed from this facility, out of our control. We don't know where they're being taken. We don't know what's going to happen to them. So we can no longer, and I can no longer chair this board, satisfy not only the citizens of Atlanta, but the citizens of the world that those ballots are still secure. So that is a major concern that I have right now. Again, my point is, once they were here, as long as they were here in the control of Fulton County, I was confident that they were safe and secure. And the other point I'd like to make, this goes back to the 2020 elections. For the life of me, I still cannot understand the fascination about the 2020 elections, which occurred 6 years ago. That election is over with. That election has been reviewed, it's been audited, and in every case, every instance, we get a clean bill of health. If there's anybody who knows what happened in 2020 on that night at State Farm Arena, it was Fulton County Commission Chairman Rob Pitts. I was there. So the fascination with this, I still don't understand it, but we'll have more to say later.
Okay, so when he began, one of the things that he said is, when they were here, they were under our control, and now they've been removed, and so we can no longer speak to whether they are safe and secure. What an amazing, amazing fib to come up with. They've been collected and seized by the FBI under court order. And he's trying to set the stage, I believe, to be able to say later, well, if something's found, I can't guarantee that those changes or whatever you found wasn't done after they were out of our control. That's not going to work. And it's not going to work because many are standing up saying, well, all the evidence suggests that Trump and company have known for quite some time what's been done, and indeed reported on having found and caught much of this years ago. Now, the question becomes, well, why would they let it go? Well, to your point, some of this has to be done in excruciatingly precise ways so that it's completely waterproof, completely precise, so that nobody can squeeze out from underneath it. But in addition, by letting people repeat their crimes, they are actually indicting themselves yet again, because I think you mentioned in our previous session, one of the keys is much of the laws around working against our country have to do with knowingly doing something. And how do you prove knowingly? Well, sometimes perhaps you let and watch people do it again and catch them at it. I have a short video of Trump going back.
Before you go to that, he said he was there when they did the count that night.
Yes.
Do you remember the suitcases under the desks?
Oh, yes.
You remember when pulling out the suitcases with ballots?
Yes.
They thought the cameras were turned off. Remember them putting big white papers over the windows so that nobody could check what they were doing or how they were counting or what was happening?
Right. And having a supposed water main break that caused everybody to be ordered out of the building. And it turned out there was no water main break. There was a leaky toilet and it was minor.
Yeah, but that happened because we were trying to have them be transparent, and they wouldn't be transparent. But they had no idea we had cameras all throughout, because I remember seeing this on news. I remember seeing what they were doing with the suitcases. Yep. And as soon as they said the time was up, they didn't leave because of the water break. They were there. It was like 2 a.m. and they're pulling out the suitcases and they're doing other counts and they're adding other ballots and all of these things that they did. What they're not understanding is there's a lot of ballots that don't have the specific watermark. They don't have the SKU numbers. They were printed and they forgot to put the SKU numbers on them. So, and they were recounting. Remember how they said they put them through multiple times?
Mm-hmm.
We already have that audit. We already know the problems. Now we're just pulling in the documents. We're at that point. When you're at a subpoena point, you already know what you're going after. You already know what it says. You already know what you're looking for. That's what is so crazy. I just wanted to point that out because, again, being so loud now, we're going to quash this. We're going to file an injunction. We're going to, we already know you committed the crimes. Now we've just collected the evidence confirming what you did, because we already have video of what you did. Now we just want to make sure, are those still in the boxes? What do we have in these 700 boxes? And we have every right to go in and get it. It was a federal election. It wasn't a county election. That's where they're wrong. It wasn't just a Georgia state election. That's where they're wrong. They want to hold it in the county away from, and Tina Peters gave it the way it says right in on and they're all federal elections. Because remember, the Congress and everything we said in the first interview, it was all 2-year terms. It was all 2-year terms. It wasn't a midterm election. Every 2 years we could replace these people, but then they started having 14, 16, 18 years of 2-year terms. And they were elected. Some of them said they were elected 14, 15, 16, 17 times. It's in their records. So we weren't getting rid of people every 2 years. And so that's why they just extended Congress to 4 years, Senate to 6, and made 6-year popular vote. All of this has to be cleaned up. All of this has to be corrected. We have to have the right, as we the people, to remove those who do not represent us and replace them with those who will. And we're losing all of that with what you just provided in this video, Bill. And that's what we have lost in this country. And we have to regain the structure and restructure the way it needs to be in America, or we aren't fixing the problem just by having better ballots or one-day ballots or one-day election, or we're not correcting it if we don't get the foundation of it correct.
Yeah. So one of the other things that we've seen, and I believe you spoke of it 2 videos ago, was how things again begin to tie together as we see more. You know, a lot of people questioned early on in Trump's latest term, gosh, what's this focus on Panama? Why is this important? And at the time, it seemed interesting, but it didn't seem to fit as a puzzle piece in the grand scheme of what he was trying to accomplish. Well, since that's happened, and now that the shenanigans or worse going on in Venezuela have been uncovered, and the fact that Cuba was apparently one of the key drivers, perhaps controllers is a better word, inside Venezuela, now we begin to see the pieces come together. And you reported the latest findings in Panama, I believe just today. Go ahead and tell us what's happened here, please.
This just came out this morning on Discover TV, and Panama's Supreme Court is ruling that the Hong Kong company's contracts to run the ports at both ends of the Panama Canal, it's unconstitutional. To Panama, not to the United States, to Panama. But it was brought to their attention, and people may not understand. It was toward the end of 25, President Trump came out with a new term. He coined the term Donroe Doctrine, because what's happening is the infiltration everywhere of people who shouldn't even be there. It's happening just like the Monroe Doctrine, and that was the focus of the Monroe Doctrine. In 1820, he became President Monroe, and then they took him out on the 55th anniversary, like they did Jefferson and Adams on our 50th anniversary of 1776. So in 1826 and 1831, those 3 presidents were taken out on the anniversary. And the Monroe Doctrine in 1820, 11 years before they took him out, before he became president, he was giving a report to Congress. And he said, if we don't stop this infiltration, if we don't stop letting other people control everything here, we're letting all the tyranny that we got away from come here and control us here. And that's exactly what's happened. So now let's back up to what's in the book. And this is in the Panama Canal chapter. I put in all the pictures of what President Trump was doing. And when I said, I'd like to know who's in control of it, he answered that on the Tucker interview in 23. Fast forward, that was August 23 of 23. Fast forward to Christmas Day of 24. And then Christmas Day of 24, he goes, Merry Christmas. Because I said, if we're getting the control, if we're getting the control back from Panama, who's doing the security? And who's doing the maintenance? That was my question after he came out with everything on December 22, and all these pictures and social media from the president are all in the book. And so here's the picture of him sending a ship through, calling it United States of America Canal on December 22. And on December 25, when they said, what's the next question? I said, security and maintenance. Because with all of this being true, everything God has given me, with all of that being true, we have to be paying the maintenance. And if we're doing all of this and our ships are paying 4 to 5 times the amount they're supposed to pay, more than any other ships are paying, who's paying the maintenance? Because I'm willing to bet it's us. And so he goes, Merry Christmas. Did you know down at that down at that canal, did you know that there are Chinese soldiers on both sides of that canal? And here it comes out today that Hong Kong contract is in control on both sides, and Chinese soldiers have been the security on both sides. So he'd been working on this since Christmas Day of 24. That's before he got in as president. Well, he was still president. He's been president. That's why it's a dash. It's not a comma. We've handled that. So you know that. So now, but he wanted to be legally in, and had, before Marco Rubio became Secretary of State, to research all this. And so I had to extend the copyright on the book to bring it out in 25. But this is what he said. The soldiers of China, the Chinese soldiers, are on both sides of that canal illegally. He didn't call them security people. You see, that's AI protecting us in AI. I ask about security. He answers based on soldiers on both sides. They're illegally yet loyally, but he's going to get it taken care of. And he said, and did you know the repairs, and he put repairs in quotes. So he didn't say, did you know the maintenance has been paid by us? He said the repairs, and it's been billions of dollars a year, and we have no voice in this. And so he was answering it, and boom, guys, here is another step in the puzzle, in the Donroe Doctrine, showing us Hong Kong had these contracts on both sides. That's why they were Chinese soldiers on both sides. And so now that's had to go through the course legally in Panama, and Panama's Supreme Court has just ruled that it's against the Constitution of Panama, that they can't be near Panama because it's not our country, it's our land. Do you see the difference? They said it was their land and forever to be their land on December 22. And the president said, we'll see about that. And 1 hour he sent that ship through confirming, you might think it's your land, but we'll see about this, because that land was never transferred. It was never, we never received anything for it. They said it was 2 treaties and $1. There's no treaties that we could find. But I found the U.S. State Department statement, Second Panama Canal Treaty, that land was supposedly going to cease to exist on 1 October 1979. And that's when he found the lie, the whole thing fell apart. And that's when he was able to go in and take action with Marco Rubio. And it's just powerful what's been happening. And Marco Rubio is the one, there's new information coming in from Cuba. I don't know if we've covered that, but there's new information coming in from Cuba as to what's happening. And did you want to go into that next?
Sure.
Because you have some stuff on Cuba, and the president has just said that anybody who's giving oil and gas to Cuba is going to have 100% tariffs. And he's getting things addressed in Cuba.
Right. Now, this is serious because he announced this as a national emergency. That gives him and the initiative certain capabilities that you don't have outside a national emergency. And it's very interesting that we spoke of the possibility of a national emergency emerging some weeks ago. Now, is this the one? Are there going to be others? We don't know that. But essentially, it appears to be making it near impossible for any country to be providing oil to Cuba. If they do, they face these very high tariffs. How would they be able to withstand that? And then what's going to occur with Cuba as this process goes through? The other question then is, what has Cuba actually been doing? He spoke of Cuba having a controlling influence in Venezuela. but we never get into the detail of how that was orchestrated, who actually was doing it. Have you heard any more on the details behind that, or is that still to be uncovered at some point as we go forward?
Details behind
how Cuba was either controlling or influencing Venezuela, because he spoke of that during the immediately following the Maduro extrication.
Well, that is part of what this is. This is not the national emergency he's been talking to us about, and that our friend has been talking about. We have a national emergency that's pending regarding elections, and I think that's what Fulton County is about. I think that's what those things are about. But but Cuba is not cooperating, and Cuba is not providing information. And the only way we're going to be good neighbors for each other is if we become transparent with each other. And so to do this, to proceed with this, and that's why he's got Marco Rubio, he says, doing a great job there. He's uncovering these things that have to be resolved. And I'm pretty sure that the percent that the tariffs are going to be not on Cuba, it's on anybody that provides oil or gas to Cuba.
Right.
Because that's how you get them to resolve things. And they're unwilling to resolve at this point is all I knew, but I don't know what you mean about the details behind what.
Well, he inferred that there was controlling influence coming from Cuba within Venezuela, and we never heard how that was constructed, who specifically might be involved in it, and I wondered if there was something that I had not yet seen that indicated they were starting to talk about that. Perhaps that's still to come in the disclosures that are happening almost daily now.
Well, and imagine when he's finding out about Mexico, because the president of Mexico was with him yesterday when all of this was happening. So again, let's talk. I mentioned about the heart around the Panama Canal. It's so emotional for me to think about this, about what got, because nobody knew about anything we could do with that canal. it's emotional. So anyway, if you look at the heart, it's Mexico, Cuba. If you at the top points of the heart and down to Panama, and then you've got Colombia and you've got Venezuela. And we already talked about this going all the way back to the Spanish-American War and the Rough Riders and San Juan Hill and protecting Guantanamo to have a Navy base there because we needed it structured there.
Yep.
But when I did the research on that about Cuba, it's the same thing as Mexico thinking we stole their land and we gave them $15 million in the late 1800s, at around 1898, 1900. So they've already been paid, but the government tells them they stole and they want the people to rise up and come get that land back. And get what land back? You don't have land up here. And the same has happened in Cuba. When I looked this up to confirm about Guantanamo as the Navy base, they said it's been so horrible as to what has been stolen from Cuba because America has stolen land from Cuba. We've never stolen land from Cuba. We have leased that Guantanamo land to have that base. We built the base, not Mexico or Cuba. They're all saying we steal and we don't steal. We paid the price. We paid the price in Panama. We paid the price in Mexico. We paid the price in Cuba. But it's even a CNN article, as you do the research, that says Cuba is still upset about the land America stole from Cuba. Why are those headlines out there now with all this happening? Why does that come up in a search? Because they're feeding the people that America is doing the wrong thing. But what they don't understand, the people that know the truth already know that we're becoming the best neighbor to Maduro and Venezuela and Maria Machado, because she won that election. So we're already getting that handled. We're getting their oil and gas handled. But Cuba having a control over it, and Mexico and all of this destruction, it all comes down to who our government's been paying the most to make them the kingpin of the problem. We're paying, I cannot emphasize this enough. We're paying for all of this to be done by these nations against us. We're paying the price for their training. We're paying the price for the people who've come here and they're being trained here. And they're not just being trained in education items or how to do riots in churches. They're being trained out in the wilderness on how to take us over. We're at a critical point of enemies, foreign and domestic. I thought people knew this, but if you don't know this and you're not realizing what's going on, that's why we talked about the Penguin. Didn't we talk about that in the first interview? We talked about the Penguin.
We began to, yes.
Okay, because the Penguin unit, how many of you have seen the picture? I wish you could answer me right now, but how many of you have seen the picture where the president is heading toward the mountaintop and he's got a penguin next to him? And if you only saw that one, go and search some more, because you're going to see every one of our divisions of our military, all in uniform, walking toward, looks like that same mountain or a similar mountain. The picture looks the same or similar. And there's a penguin. Why was that sent out to us? Because there's a Penguin unit. The Penguin unit was trained in extreme cold weather situations. And you know what came out as things got worse and worse even yesterday? As of yesterday, there's 9 more days that this is going to go on. Is this our 10 days? Because that Penguin unit is trained under those extreme cold conditions. They can handle the missions. Because what happens in extreme cold conditions? We go inside, keep warm with our families, stay away from those things. We're not running around everywhere. And how many times has our friend told us since 22, when all this happens, stay away from it. Don't be out there with your vehicles. Don't be on the streets. Don't be around these people. Don't let it be taken care of. Our guys are trained in this. It's happened in other nations. And we know the setups. And our guys knew the setups. And they still had to follow orders of the leaders, which was what was taken care of in Quantico 1 year and 9 months to the day of the military accountability letter coming out on 1/1 of 2024. So they were already doing court martials, had already arrested, and were already taking military leadership through these processes. And you're wanting perp walks on the street of people. It happens. They bring them in, they do the questioning with them. And if you can, go back and find the Kavanaugh interview when he was up for Supreme Court Justice. In that interview, Lindsey Graham went through the entire questioning sequence of what is civil justice, what is criminal justice, what is military justice. And we haven't seen or understood military justice because we don't witness court martials.
That's right.
They are taped, but we don't see them. As citizens, we don't know who in the military has been taken to court martial or removed. We don't see these things. But because it seems like the media has given us video of everything, they're not. They're auditioning and performing to give you what they're supposed to give you based on the 4 a.m. memo from Associated Press. This came out on a military panel I was on Tuesday night, and they kept saying about how everybody seems to know the same things, and the media tells us the same things. So when it was my turn to answer, I said, for decades, it's been the 4 a.m. memo from Associated Press. It came out on teletype, and that teletype list of topics for the day is just written and rewritten and rewritten. And when I was watching the news, I didn't notice that it was all the same. But once I was in the newsroom for a few years, back in the 80s, I saw all of this happen. And I'm like, we're telling the people the same thing. We're just giving it a different headline. Is this what you guys do? Yeah. It just was like, what? And it all comes off the Associated Press. So they're only telling you what they want you to know.
Yeah. We've shown video after video of, and you're referring to the underpinnings, the infrastructure that supports the Mockingbird media that many people now have heard about. And it's astounding to actually watch it, competing radio and TV stations all across the country saying the same phrases to blast the narrative into the minds of Americans so that they can create belief. Essentially, the more times you hear something, you have a tendency to believe it. And so by having you hear it dozens of times from various places, they create belief. It's amazing.
Well, and that's why in mentioning, boom, all of a sudden, it's coming up in the newsfeed on searches for research for books. And there I am checking all of this out, and they're talking about stealing land from Cuba. And then all of a sudden the president comes out within 24, 48 hours about an emergency. An edict about Cuba.
Yeah. Well,
So it's a buildup to have you think a certain way to then blame the president. Well, they must have known he was going to be doing this to them, and that's how this happened. And we go into that mode. Why? Because we're listening to fake news.
That's right. You've mentioned your book several times. I want to make sure that the audience knows how to acquire these and find them. So take us through. This is your latest book, yes? Take us through this and what's included in it, and then we'll go backward and look at some of the other books that you brought out.
Well, this book is about the 45 points they used to destroy every nation. And this one was specifically about us and how they were going to destroy us. It was read into our congressional record on January 10 of 1963. It was handed to me by International Attorney Todd Callender back at the end of 22 into 23 when we were working on all this stuff regarding the genocide. They called it a pandemic, but there's one every 20 years. And now it was their ultimate 2020. And so I got to meet him. He handed me this because remember when Brunson did the case on Congress not taking an oath?
Mm-hmm.
So I just made a side comment. I said, do you suppose that, I mean, I only got 3 of the 12 judges and I only got 1 attorney of the 7 law firms on federal RICO charges in San Diego. I said, do you suppose that those judges that were involved didn't take an oath to the Constitution? And he did a research and found out even the J6 judges haven't taken a constitutional oath. Wow. And so he has a case that he filed on April 18 of 2023. And by July, I already have my research to the team. And it was August 23 of 23 that the Tucker interview with the president came out. And the Tucker transcript is in the book. All the pictures I just told you about are in the book. The FBI chapter, not just because of what the agents and agency did to ruin my life, they did a targeted individual case against me, which is now a federal grand jury case moving through the system. I was invited as an individual to do it, a citizen, which doesn't happen. And so in all of this coming together, that chapter is the biggest chapter in the book. It's over 60 pages about the FBI. And that is point 35. They were going to discredit and dismantle the FBI, but they found it so purposeful and they were being so successful. And so this book, I wasn't going to write another book about what was happening in America. I was going to finish 6 and 7, and that was going to be it. But this book feeds into 6 and 7, and that's why you don't have those yet. And that's why you don't have second edition Nation Restoration. And so those are all going to come out next. This book explains to you how we can counter all of this. And so that's why I did this book. And it's in, you can get paperback and ebook on the website. You can get paperback, ebook, Kindle, and now a new hardback. It just came out in hardback in December. If you want these, you can purchase them right on the website. But when you have to go to Amazon to purchase the hardback, if you want it autographed, then you donate $60 to the Cornerstone on the homepage or on the donate page. We'll get your address from that. We'll autograph we will order it. We will pay all the price to order it and get it to us. I'll autograph it, and then we will again ship it out to you. And there's no other fee. The 60 is to cover all of that. It's the 35 on the hardback on Amazon. You can order it on Amazon direct. If you don't have, or you're not remembering how to order these, write in on the ministry contact form and say, I want the hardback autograph. I want the hardback, whatever you want. The links are all in our December newsletter. So if you did not receive the December newsletter from us, just in the ministry contact form, there'll be a space to insert and say, Sheila said you'll send me the December newsletter. Please send it to me. And then we will register your email. Now, if you want a different email or you want the other newsletters, if you want anything else from us by email, we don't send out emails except that newsletter. And if you want that newsletter, there's a separate contact form for the newsletter because there's a legal process of did these people request to get these newsletters from you? Because we're not going to send them if you didn't request them. So please fill out, you're writing into me on the ministry one saying, add me to the newsletter list. And I can't do it. It's through the computer. It has to be through the computer where you fill out that contact form, the computer will retain it. And then when the newsletter comes out, it'll come right out through the website and it'll come direct to you. It doesn't come from us anymore through a personal Outlook office at his best. So it's not going to come from, it's going to come from that, but it's going to be from the website. So this book is the kingpin of what I'm telling you. Is now we found out their game, and now you're going to be able to find out as you pray, Father, what would you have me do for this country? Because you can send me. I will do what you want me to do, and the opportunities are in every section of this book. And so that's the new book that came out. And the Nation Restoration is the one that showed the infiltration and using our Social Security numbers that created identity theft. And they use the Social Security numbers of dead people so that no one would sue them as they started. And when they did that, that's why so many dead people are now getting Social Security, because it's people who are illegally in our country are using their numbers. Wow. And just so you guys know, I didn't know that when this book came out, but it'll be in the new book. The right-hand guy to Elon Musk was saying that, did you know that 4 million illegals came in during the Biden administration? Isn't that horrible? Well, guys, there's almost 30 million that are using Social Security numbers from that. Here's where he got the number. Did you know that they issued 4 million brand new Social Security numbers to people who came in illegally during the 4 years under Biden, or AutoPen? And those 4 million are numbers that are not anywhere. So my question is, and this will be in the new book, how are they getting Social Security benefits when they never worked in America? How are those being calculated? How are they receiving benefits off a Social Security number that belongs to another citizen? So that's a question I have. And it's one that we're going to have to deal with, because when they said they wanted another national number, there's no reason for a national number. Fingerprint. If fingerprint's good enough for the banks, if fingerprint's good enough for everything else, they can't have your fingerprint. That's what makes us unique. Every one of us have a different print. And so there's other options for us other than a numbered system that they've tapped into. Because I was just at a swearing in Florida. And did you know that there's a certificate number on their naturalized citizenship paper? And the guy said, don't show this don't be excited and hold it up and show it as a picture, because people will use that number and cause identity theft against you. Isn't that interesting? And then they said only 3 names, and whatever order you put them in, whatever your first name is, you always have to use that as your first name. You can't use another name as your first name. You have to do one first name, last name, and a middle name. Because some people have 4 and 5 and 6 names. And in China, when they're here, they're constantly changing the spelling of their names. So if it was this way in these documents, and they spell it a different way on these documents. And so all of that is supposed to get cleaned up with this new certificate. And here was the funny part. They said, do you know why you have to do this? And you cannot do it any other way, because I think you guys realize we have a new administration and they're making us follow this rule. Excuse me? Immigration has changed because of a new administration. So we have a lot of cleanup to do as we, the people, can get involved in all of these organizations within our government and make a difference in our country.
We do. I think it would, many people have been anticipating there would be big changes under Trump. But I think one of the things we're learning now is this is a process, and will continue to be a process for probably quite some time. And it requires all of us, as you say. So
there'll be 4 to 5 decades of cleanup. We can do what we can do now to get the structure right. But then we, the people, and Benjamin Franklin said the right thing to Mrs. Powell when she asked, so what have you given us? And he said, we've given you a republic if you can keep it. And I've often shared the Jefferson quote, and we've shared it on our interviews, I know. And the Jefferson quote is that once there's an evil, you cannot just replace that evil. That corruption that has been caused has to be completely dealt with, and you have to restructure. And that's where we are.
Yep.
We're not in a hurry. We want it right.
Have to have it right.
Mm-hmm.
Sheila, thank you so much for being with us again. We will look forward to seeing you very soon, and continue to make progress to help people understand, and hopefully help them get involved where they can and should, based on Father's guidance.
Oh, bless you, Bill, and thank you.
Thank you.